I have unfortunately been bullied a lot because I was too skinny and I used to talk a lot. I would say foolish things, and as a result, I was bullied. I now avoid speaking more than necessary and do not interact with people except for 3 or 4 individuals. I have started believing that being alone is better to avoid getting bullied and to prevent conflicts with others. Story 1. I'm a pretty big guy. I've never been bullied. But in my teens and 20s, it seemed like everyone wanted to test the biggest guy in the room. I've been wrestling since I was 5. I did some Brazilian jiu-jitsu in my 20s. The town nearest my house was pretty small, so word traveled fast that it was a bad idea to challenge me. I took a couple of beatings and gave out a lot as well. As I aged, I learned ways to de-escalate situations without fighting. Story 2. As a child in school, I was never bullied despite being small and skinny, because my brother was an American Boxing Association heavyweight champion. People did not want to fight him. As an adult, it is simple. I do not let anyone bully me. If someone is overtly aggressive, I walk away. If someone raises their voice at me, I calmly tell them to stop. Story 3. In the past, we used to make friends with our bullies, but I suppose children are no longer taught to do that. One strategy one learned as a child was to become no fun to bully. It is enjoyable to provoke someone you are trying to tease. However, it is pointless to try to bully someone who responds in uninteresting ways. Be as boring as possible to bully, and you will never be in a fight again. Story 4. I was always skinny, the eldest of 7 siblings. I don't know why, but I always found comfort hanging out with older people. I moved to a new school at 7. During the first break, the school bully ran at me, and he was massive. I knew I couldn't beat him and didn't know what he was going to do, but the fact that everyone else ran worried me. I squatted down, grabbed a brick, and as he got to me, I swung my hands. It was over in a second with this massive kid bleeding heavily. I thought I had killed him. Everyone was quiet and staring at me. Everyone looked pale. I started crying and didn't know what to do, so I washed myself off and went back to sit in my class. The teacher came in and said I was allowed to play until the bell rang, but I said I didn't know anyone. The kids started coming back into class, and everyone was just staring at me with scared faces. I was literally waiting to go to jail. I just didn't want to get hurt by this person for no reason. No one ever reported me. We went to high school together years later, and by then I had made lots of good friends. I never had another fight at school except with the same person, nearly every year. I don't condone it, but knowing that person for years after that incident, he broke my brother's collarbones and was just a terrible human being and bully. I don't regret it. I felt everyone made an effort to be nice to me after that, and I had been nice before it. I just hate bullies, especially when there is such a big difference. Story 5. I was a pretty big but also fat kid. I was also a carpenter's son. One day a kid I could have beaten, except he was fast and never got close enough, started on my fatness. He began with the fatty 2x4, can't get through the bathroom door song. I calmly explained in front of many other kids that a 2x4 refers to a piece of wood that is actually less than 2 inches by less than 4 inches, so really pretty skinny. Then I told him he would know that if he could read, but if he could read, he wouldn't have failed and would still be in the right grade. I kept at it until he cried. Later, he came up and asked me to stop teasing him, and he would stop teasing me. I said sure. We remained cordial for a long time. I hit a growth spurt and thinned out. He probably didn't read much. I was never bullied after that. Story 6. Apparently, I come across as somewhere between standoffish and downright threatening to most people, which I imagine has dissuaded many potential confrontations. Of course, having an unfriendly demeanor has also probably dissuaded potential friends and lovers, so I am not sure I am any better off. Story 7. I wasn't exactly bullied. There were 2 or 3 boys at school who made fun of the fact that I was very thin. I am still thin but much less so, and that my legs were very thin. However, it was never something that got out of hand. It did bother me a bit at the time, but it was a short period. I even met one of them again in adulthood, and our relationship is smooth. Otherwise, I have almost always had good relationships wherever I have been. I think the greatest asset you can have is knowing how to relate to people. If you are a calm person, think before you speak, have a sense of humor, and avoid unnecessary conflicts. Your life will generally be easier in many ways. However, if you feel disrespected, especially by someone you are not close to, you should make it clear that this kind of behavior is unacceptable. That is very important. You should set limits and not feel sorry for the other person, thinking you have overstepped. It is not about attacking the person, not even with words, but you have to make your position clear. If the person thinks it is bad, that is their problem. Difficult people come and go all the time. If you are attacked and it is not a situation where several people are against you, defend yourself. Do not feel sorry. It is meant to hurt. I am sure the person will think twice before targeting you again. Story 8. I don't have anything to prove to anyone, so I have no problem walking away from an altercation. I am of European and Maori descent. I am heavyset, with a shaved head, dark skin, and eyes. No one has ever bullied me. When it comes to fights, I never get drunk enough to start trouble. I have self-control, discipline, have trained in martial arts for 4 years, and I am somewhat of a control freak. I simply don't allow myself to be in those situations. I would much rather talk my way out of it. In our local news, a man was recently shot and killed after getting into an argument in the city. We live in a country where pistols are very difficult to obtain and very hard to get licenses for. However, there are enough illegal weapons around that incidents like this happen. A small argument on the street ended with someone pulling a pistol and killing the other person over nothing. I find that unacceptable. I also spent a fair amount of time with real gang members in a motorcycle gang and became very adept at handling overly aggressive individuals with inferiority complexes. Story 9. I was bullied throughout elementary school, some in middle school, and some as a freshman in high school. I was skinny and above average height. I was also an introvert and would just take it. Sophomore year of high school, I had a big growth spurt, then again as a junior, and then as a senior. I was still an introvert but graduated at 6 feet 6 inches tall and 165 pounds. I would still get made fun of, but I didn't care. I got in 2 altercations as a sophomore in high school where a guy would square off on me. I'd take a punch or, in one case, a crescent kick to the head and say, "If that's all you've got, it's not worth it," and walk away. In both cases, the other guys were suspended or expelled, and I was praised for walking away. After graduating from college, I was still 6 feet 6 inches and 165 pounds and couldn't gain weight to save my life. So I started lifting, and in what felt like a short time, I gained 65 pounds and 2 inches in height. Over the years, I have gained an additional 30 pounds. Now I am 6 feet 8 inches and 265 pounds. My last altercation was at a bar in Dallas, Texas. A guy sucker punched me after a misunderstanding with his girlfriend. I was trying to keep my friends from hurting him after he pushed me, so I was wide open, and he punched me very hard in the gut. I had been training my core to make it strong, so when I saw his shoulder move, I instinctively tightened my abs. He broke his wrist on my abs. I didn't flinch or move an inch. It was like hitting a wall. I didn't retaliate. I suggested his girlfriend take him to the emergency room, and for the rest of the night, his brothers bought us all drinks as a thank you for not hurting their brother, who was ripped but a foot shorter. That was a decade ago. Nowadays, when I stand up, even loudmouths shrink and run away. Due to some emotional trauma from a previous marriage, I have rage seething just under the surface. I work very hard to keep it contained. I fear that if someone pushes hard enough, it may come out, and then I'd probably go to prison. So I stay away from situations where that could happen. At 55, I don't have much desire to party. I'd rather hang out with my wife at home. Story 10. The only 2 types of men who have never had conflict are usually the men who are not confrontational and just go along to get along. They often people please and do not stand up for anything. The other type is men who are always in positions of power, which makes them useful to others and causes people to avoid picking fights with them due to the power they hold. Story 11. Being bigger than everyone else and just staring people down when they try to start something goes a long way. Not everyone can do this, but almost anyone can. Hit the gym a couple of times a week and learn the difference between talking and communicating. If you are not going to become friends with someone, It is best to communicate what needs to be communicated, say the polite things, and skip any other comments. Story 12. I think I just give off the energy of someone who can fight. And I can. I was undersized until age 16. Even now, I'm of average height, 5 feet 10 inches. I didn't start lifting weights until I was 20, so I was always skinny. I didn't threaten people. I wasn't loud. I wasn't a bully. I was cool with everyone. I played on the basketball team. I was a bit of a class clown but got good grades. I got into a couple of fights in middle school and high school, but it was always defending my friends who wouldn't stand up for themselves. I've been in boxing since I was 13. I never wanted to fight outside of training. It always amazed me how some people let others talk to them. I've always been very aware that we're all human, and if I need to, I will knock you out. But I don't want to, and I won't. That probably just comes off in my personality. I wrote all that just to say, I don't really know why people don't mess with me the way I've seen them mess with other people. I don't know why I've literally never been bullied, even though I was always small. Story 13. Find people who are in similar situations as you. Depending on where you are in life at the moment, such as high school, university, work, or hobbies, you can find people with similar problems even if they have different interests. You can identify them more easily because you have been there or are there now. Connect with them and build a mini community if you can. Retreating and observing is good, but being alone is not. Summary. Find and connect with people who have also withdrawn from everyone. Story 14. Well, I am not totally sure if I fit in either of these categories, but I will say this. When you are truly confident and secure in yourself, you tend to be less confrontational. Once you understand that many people's issues with you are more a reflection of something they have going on internally, things tend not to upset you as much. Story 15. At school, I would get into a few fights. I was skinny and unpopular, and it was the only way I knew how to stand up for myself. Overall, it worked pretty well. As an adult, I am much more mature and a very good diplomat. I have diffused many fights for my friends. I have not had anyone try to fight me, as I tend to get along with most people. Story 16. I have a very calm demeanor and seem to soothe people. I do not know why. I was out drinking with friends in a park, enjoying our time, typical summer enjoyment. Then an acquaintance of someone started looking for a fight. I just sat down next to him, offered him a beer, and started chatting. The mood was good again. Story 17. I'm huge and angry looking, with a shaved head and a prominent brow ridge that makes me look like a furious caveman. I look like a defensive lineman and have often been asked where I played football in school. I never played. The only person who ever asked me to fight was a very drunk man who passed me on the street after bar closing time. Aside from that, no one is impolite to me unless I'm working. The reason no one messes with me is basic self-preservation. I'm so big and angry looking that most bullies, muggers, and jerks see me as at least a hassle to deal with. It's also worth noting that I spent half my life sparring. My dad was big into martial arts, so he trained my older brother and me. After hundreds of hours of sparring, I feel confident that the average man would lose to me in a fight. I highly recommend you start training. It doesn't matter if you're not a big person. Learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and some kind of striking discipline. Once you're good, you'll have confidence knowing that if bullying escalates beyond words, you can handle it physically. Some people only understand violence. Story 18. I'm a bigger guy. People usually do not try to start fights with me. I try very hard to avoid fights. When I have not been able to, it has gone badly for the other person or people involved. Story 19. I did the exact same thing. I was bullied a lot in primary school. Then when I went to high school, I stayed quiet. But then I got loud again in college. It is okay now. Story 20. I have played football since I was old enough and have been lifting weights since I was allowed in a gym. In both junior high and high school, I belonged to a group of relatively bully-proof guys. Honestly, sports, especially high school sports, seem like they could solve many problems young men face today. Loneliness, lack of physical activity, lack of confidence, and boredom. It may not provide the immediate thrill of a video game, but it is rewarding in the end. Story 21. I realized those silently being condescending to me were doing so out of their own insecurities and felt threatened by my relatively young age and intelligence. This removed the anxiety that I was being treated a certain way because of my behavior. As a result, I could calmly explain my position and stance on an issue without getting emotional. I do not seek out conflict. I seek respect and, by default, treat others with respect. I actively estimate the emotional energy dealing with an issue would take and choose whether it is worth pursuing. When you disrespect me, you give me consent to do the same in return. This calculation and tit-for-tat within a calm demeanor naturally bring respect to you from others because you are not proactively inserting yourself into their lives while also being assertive when asked to speak. I understand how hard it is to get there. Confidence is often described as something you can obtain quickly. In reality, confidence is a function of your self-esteem and self-respect. You must acknowledge that as a human, you have social needs. If you are not meeting them, you need to take responsibility for putting yourself in contexts where those needs are met. That is self-respect. Doing the work only you can do to change your perspective on reality so that you can find happiness within yourself. Once that happens, confidence naturally emerges. It is not selfish to want to meet your needs before being concerned with others' needs. You are simply ensuring you bring your best self to others, something that neglecting yourself would prevent. Story 22. 6 feet 2 inches, 230 pounds, and I do not like bullies. I actually reverse the roles if someone else is being bullied, and I will stand up to the bully. Usually, it is a power-tripping person at work. Also, I have not been in a fight since high school, so I stay away from certain situations. Getting punched or kicked is unpleasant. If someone bullies, you figure out how to demean them. Story 23. Confidence. Don't be scared. You'll get preyed upon if you signal weakness. Here's a small story to illustrate what I mean. I was once at the dog park with 2 pugs and their mother. At the park, there were other dogs, including a few big ones like a bloodhound. One of the pugs was shy, scared, and always ran to mama dog. The other was bold and fearless. He soon had the entire group of dogs assembled behind him. If he was digging a hole, the others started digging a hole. If he went somewhere, the others followed. His scared brother would watch from under a bench. Other dogs would test the waters, but he was protected by his mother, so nothing much happened. The other pug was never challenged. Now, I'm no dog or psychology expert, but from what I've read, heard, and seen, it's a lot about confidence. The way you move your body, the way you talk, the way you look at people, and so on. I think building your confidence is the solution because with confidence, other aspects follow naturally. You could try doing competitive sports and get familiar with conflict. Embrace conflict and go outside your comfort zone by doing so. Once you are comfortable with conflict, you signal that you are not someone to be played with. Story 24. I got bullied in school and it stopped when I fought a bully to a draw. Bullying is about jockeying for position in a social group. If people think that tangling with you will cost them social position, they will not do it. Story 25. Peace through prosperity, deterrence through strength. Also known as speak softly and carry a big stick. Story 26. I am 190 centimeters tall, weigh 110 kilograms, and am relatively well built. I have always been called the gentle giant, but that never really happened. No one ever messed with me. I was the guy playing guitar at the fire while the other guys were all fighting. I just kind of missed out. Story 27. I have never been bullied in my life, never been in a fight, and I have been skinny my whole life. No one has ever messed with me, tried to fight me, or test me. People rarely talk badly to my face, and if they did, they never did it again. I attribute this to either luck or perhaps I have some aura that prevents people from messing with me. Story 28. I now avoid speaking more than necessary and do not interact with people more than needed, except for 3 or 4 individuals. I have been doing this since 5th grade. From my experience, maintaining a low profile usually means that bullies or others are less likely to engage with you or cause any trouble. Story 29. I tried my best to keep a low profile and be friendly in my interactions. Even with bullies in school, I used to offer to buy lunches for them without being asked because I saw that they did not eat during breaks. They were fun to hang out with. I never joined in the bullying, and they never bullied me either. After school, there were no bullies. There were some difficult coworkers, but I steered clear of them. I never liked office politics. Then I went on my own, so those issues were not present either. You can mostly avoid conflict throughout your life if you know how to navigate it. Also, it helps not to be born in high-conflict areas of the world. Story 30. Most physical altercations are foolish and a waste of time. If it becomes physical, you must be willing to risk your life for whatever you provoked because a fight is not worth having unless you are prepared to face the consequences. Story 31. I don't regret being physically bullied. It taught me to be tougher and stand up for myself. I was a talkative kid who wanted to be everybody's friend. I would ride my bike to neighborhoods I didn't know and try to make friends with everyone. I learned quickly that most people are territorial and don't want to be your friend. It is an important lesson to learn young because the world has many difficult people. I am not a supporter of bullying, but I'm glad I learned early how harsh other people can be, and I am grateful it was only the occasional physical beating. Bullying among girls was worse when I was in high school in the early 2000s. I saw girls bully others so badly they switched school districts. They would bully someone until she developed an eating disorder at best or committed suicide at worst. Boys mostly fought physically with each other. By adulthood, we are all hardened and can barely stand to be in the same room with strangers. Story 32. I am pretty average in size, but intelligence and communication skills have helped me a lot. People who want to fight over trivial things are usually not the smartest. Use your brain in those situations, not your muscles. It is astonishing how much that can neutralize bullies and foolish people. Story 33. I used to get bullied and beaten up a lot when I was in middle school and high school. I started training in karate for about 4 years, earned a black belt, and went to a full contact tournament to test myself, but got badly defeated. About a year later, I moved a few blocks from a Muay Thai gym and signed up. I trained diligently for several years, sparring regularly, and became skilled enough that my coach had me spar with the bigger guys who didn't have anyone in their weight class. Or maybe he just disliked me. I'm still not sure. I noticed that around that time, I had not been in any kind of altercation for a long time. I didn't even worry about it when I was out at bars or events. Since then, a couple of drunk men have approached me looking to pick a fight or intimidate me, but they always leave after a few seconds of interaction. I think the calm demeanor I have in those situations really confuses them, and they don't know how to respond. I think about it a lot. Story 34. I've never been bullied, thankfully. Bullies are cowards and only pick fights they can win. I'm 6 feet 2 inches now, a late bloomer. I cannot fight as I have never had any practice and never needed to. What I rely on now is my confidence, posture, self-control of my emotions, and the common sense to deal with conflict situations logically. I was a skinny, wiry kid with glasses in school. Nobody from our area got bullied because it was well known that kids from the neighborhood stuck together, and picking on any of us was picking on all of us. That came from the presence of a boxing club in the area decades earlier that took care of each other, and it stuck. Community was the shield for my friends and me. Story 35. You either dissolve the tension with jokes or plant your feet and prepare to fight. Many people do not actually want to fight. They just want to look tough and will back down when challenged. A word of caution. Some people will want to fight, and you must be ready for that. Story 36. Not a big guy myself. The only time someone tried to bully me was in high school. He was a year older, probably 8 inches taller, and nearly twice my weight. Typical insecure fat kid bully. He pushed me, and I stepped forward, looking him straight in the eyes for maybe 15 seconds. He did nothing. So, I guess it was confidence. Later in life, probably 99% of fights are due to alcohol. Cutting that out pretty much reduced the chance of physical fights to 0. Story 37. I'm short, way shorter than average. I wasn't bullied at school growing up, and oddly enough, I think being comfortable with conflicts helped me avoid getting bullied. People love to tease me, and I would tease them right back. It's a give and take. Dealing with conflict is another way to become a bit more capable and hardy enough to handle them in the future. Avoiding conflict is like not exercising. you'll end up weak and vulnerable. So if someone teases you, tease them right back. If someone jokes around with you, return the favor. Avoiding these interactions builds the pattern in your mind that any slight or comment towards you should be ignored. That won't make you more resilient if you avoid it all the time. Standing up for yourself or asserting yourself in a healthy way toughens your psyche. Story 38. I was a nerd with glasses and still am. I was mostly bullied in school. In ninth grade, I started taking karate. Twice a week, I would go to class and get my butt kicked by my classmates and teacher. I'm no ninja, but I stopped being scared of beatings. This shapes your behavior and builds confidence. It allows you to push back the next time you are bullied, making the bullying ineffective. I can also take a punch like a Terminator. So I have that going for me. Story 39. When I was younger, I got into a lot of fights. I never started them, but if someone got aggressive, I would match their energy, and then they would swing. Now that I am getting close to 40, I honestly do not see the point in it. I avoid fights by staying calm. If someone yells in my face saying they will kick my ass because I asked them to return their shopping cart, and I say, "Would you rather go to jail than take your cart back?" people tend to back down. Story 40. I had the opposite experience as an adult. I was a skinny kid and young adult. Never bullied as a kid, just normal fights. My dad taught me to never put up with bullying. When I became more muscular around 26 years old, or so others say, not me, 6'1" at 220 pounds, 12% body fat, I got a lot more attention, including negative. One time, a drunk man came up and asked if I thought I could fight him just because I was big. Completely out of nowhere, I had literally just arrived. Not wanting to get jumped, stabbed, or shot, I said, "No, I do not. This is for show." He just nodded and walked off. Another time, at a lounge, two women came up to me and began making gorilla noises and flexing to mock me. I was just minding my business with a male friend. Another woman came up and said something like, "You're attractive, but you probably have a dumb job like personal trainer." I said, "No, just another attorney, but you are way too overweight for me," and laughed. A few other minor incidents. Not bullying though. Story 41. 5 feet 8 inches, 175 pounds, former Marine. Growing up, I was one of the smallest kids at school, so I was often a target. I had to be violent to stop people from picking on me. I have never picked a fight and tried to avoid conflict, but people don't quit sometimes. To this day, people still try to mess with me, and I am 43. The surprised look on their faces when the Marine comes at them is priceless. Story 42. The times I have been mistreated, I just smile and walk away because there is no point in escalating the situation when I can de-escalate by walking away. However, there have been times when I have been tested and had to use force against my better judgment. I am 5 feet 6 inches tall and weigh 130 pounds. I am a small person. It does not matter when people are unaware of what you are capable of or the skills you possess. However, when they find out, they do not challenge you again. It usually does not last long, often less than a moment. Story 43. Carry a firearm or a knife and be willing to defend yourself. Edit. Whoever reported this for threatening violence can disregard this. I won the appeal. Story 44. People never start trouble with me. I am like the capybara with all the different animals. People of all kinds accept me as one of their own. Story 45. Do not put yourself in a situation where you will be with men prone to sudden violence. Carry a firearm for all other situations. Story 46. If someone says something bad about you, consider it. If it is true, agree and start thinking about how you can improve in that aspect. If it is something that you cannot change, maybe joke about it. If it is not true, ask for clarification. If someone is passive-aggressive, consider them inferior to you and it should bother you less. Then you can ignore them, similar to how you should not be angry at a spider for living in a corner of your house. If someone attempts to physically assault you, depending on the severity, either report it or avoid them. For a more permanent solution, arrange for this to happen in a place with witnesses so that someone else can report it. Consider the future. How likely is it that you will have contact with the people around you in 5 years? What about 10 or 20? The opinions of the people around you become less significant when you think like this. This allows you to be more confident and less bothered by things. Story 47. I am 6 feet tall and weigh 190 pounds now and am older at this point. In high school, I was about 170 pounds and fought all the time. The first time was due to some type of bully nonsense, and I was not going to be bullied. Even after high school, it continued to happen. Living in a small town in one of the poorest parts of the country, there was not much to do. Drink, fight, have sex, use drugs, especially back in the 1980s. I have since moved and have not been in a fight in 2 decades. Avoiding places with that type of people is the best option. Story 48. 18 years of lifting, running, climbing, and combat sports will make people not want to mess with you. They tend to agree with me even if it means changing their opinion to match mine. Story 49. I think what you can do to avoid being bullied is a mix of not caring about what people say and letting them know when they are crossing the line by having a reaction that shows they are being extremely weird and nonsensical. Nothing aggressive. People are usually not interested in messing with you if they don't get a reaction most of the time and if you make them look like they are out of line. The problem is when it gets physical, because it is never worth getting into a fight, especially as you get older. If you want to do something against bullies, you should know that being annoying is much more effective than being aggressive. Story 50. Not a very big person, and compared to most others in this discussion, I would classify myself as small. I am 5 feet 8 inches tall, weigh 180 pounds, and am deaf. I have never been able to avoid fights because I am not very big, and people think a deaf person makes an easy target. I have spent more than 20 years training under an Olympic champion and professional boxer, and sparring with his son, who is now a professional fighter. I have put many opponents to sleep by confronting me. Most learn the first time. Those with something to prove make it a bigger deal and get knocked out multiple times. I do not like to fight. I never have. I grew up in violence and abuse, and I dislike having to fight with another person. Just because someone is big does not mean they can fight. It just means they are big. Just because someone is small does not mean they can fight either. But if you see someone who can knock people out, it is probably best not to mess with that person, especially someone who, for the last 30 to 40 years, has been bullied and jumped. Learning to box has been one of the best things I have done. It taught me to stay calm in high stress, breathe through it, and deliver pain carefully. One advantage of being deaf is that you do not hear all the external noise, so it is easier to focus. I can also sense when someone's adrenaline is at a peak, so I know when to intensify and when to make the other person work harder. Everyone should learn to fight in a controlled way. It would end bullying. People would be nicer to each other and less prone to overreact when situations worsen. Story 51. 2 factors help prevent bullying. One is physical size. The other is social influence. Bullies primarily fear losing social standing. They usually avoid targeting individuals with strong social networks. Story 52. I was bullied a lot growing up. I avoided fights by not engaging and realizing that the people who were doing it were just trying to make themselves feel better about their own lives. I succeeded by going out, living a great life, and not caring about them. Fighting in general is unwise, and I will only do it if I need to. I know how, but I have never had a reason to. That will only happen if someone physically attacks me. Story 53. You do not avoid them. You make it clear by the way you carry and conduct yourself that you are not afraid to fight. Then you will not have to. Story 54. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall and weigh 270 pounds. In my freshman year of high school, I was 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighed 210 pounds. I was not huge but bigger than most students. By college, I weighed 240 pounds. Couple of comments. 1. I have no idea if I can fight. Honestly, I have always been so big that no one has ever tried to fight me. Size does not make you a good fighter, but I have always been big enough that picking a fight with me is too much of a hassle. I do not run my mouth either. I do not go around instigating fights and have always tried to settle disputes with words. If someone attacked me or someone I care about, or if I just needed to step in, I would step in. It has just never happened in 46 years of life. Story 55. That is so sad. It is what I do. I am a woman, sorry. I am a shell of myself. I am probably neurodiverse, so I just stay quiet instead of saying inappropriate things and upsetting people. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.